I never imagined that a routine winter patrol would bring me to my knees in the snow, sobbing, with two wolves pressed against my trembling body. But there I was, 24 hours after it all began, understanding for the first time what it meant to be truly alive. It started with a shadow moving through my headlights. A tiny wolf pup, no bigger than my boot, stumbling through the freezing darkness. Alone. Desperate. When she grabbed my pant leg with her teeth and pulled me toward the woods, I knew something was terribly wrong. What I found hidden in those frozen trees stopped my heart cold. A mother, fighting for her last breath, her leg mangled in an illegal trap, blood staining the white snow crimson. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start where it truly began. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from. Now, let's continue with the story. Timber Ridge, Montana. Population 3,000, give or take. The kind of town where everyone knows your name, your business, and probably what you had for breakfast. Nestled at the foot of the Rocky Mountains, surrounded by the Bitterroot National Forest, it's the sort of place people call picturesque, beautiful, if you're into that sort of thing. Me? I'd lived here 6 years and still felt like a stranger. It was mid-January, the coldest part of winter, 10 degrees below zero, the kind of cold that bites through your bones. By 4:30 in the afternoon, the sun was already setting, casting long shadows across the snow-covered streets. Most folks were inside, huddled by their fireplaces, smart enough to stay out of the bitter wind. I was Officer Sarah Whitfield, 30 years old, and I'd been patrolling these streets for what felt like forever. 6 years with the Timber Ridge Police Department. 6 years of keeping my head down, doing my job, going home alone. I'd been orphaned at 5, left on the steps of St. Catherine's Children's Home with nothing but a small backpack and a social worker's pitying smile. I never knew my parents, never knew what it felt like to belong to someone. The foster system taught me one valuable lesson: don't get attached. People leave. People always leave. So I built walls, high ones, thick ones, walls that kept everyone at arm's length. I became a cop because I wanted to matter, wanted to help people even if I couldn't help myself. But I never let anyone close. My colleagues respected me, sure, called me reliable, professional, competent, but never warm, never a friend. I lived in a small apartment on the edge of town. 1 bedroom, minimal furniture, no pictures on the walls. Nothing that suggested a life actually lived there. Just a place to sleep between shifts. My routine was simple: work, gym, home, repeat, day after day. I told myself I was fine, told myself I didn't need anyone, told myself that loneliness was just the price of self-protection. That particular evening, I was exhausted. I'd worked a double shift, and earlier that day I'd responded to a domestic violence call. A woman with bruises, children crying in the background. It brought back memories I'd spent years trying to bury, memories of foster homes where I'd learned to make myself small, invisible, safe. As I drove my patrol car through the empty streets, I felt older than 30. Tired, hollow. I had no idea that in the next few minutes everything would change, that a tiny creature would appear from the darkness and crack open the walls I'd spent a lifetime building. I was making my last rounds through the residential area, ready to call it a night. My hands gripped the steering wheel loosely, my mind already planning the simple evening ahead. Chinese takeout, maybe a shower, then sleep. That's when I saw it. Movement in my headlights, quick, darting across the snow-covered road. My foot hit the brake instinctively. The patrol car slid slightly on the ice before coming to a stop. I squinted through the windshield, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. A small figure stood in the middle of the street, maybe 20 feet ahead. At first, I thought it was a dog, maybe a coyote. But as my eyes adjusted, I realized what I was looking at. A wolf pup. It couldn't have been more than 8 or 10 weeks old. Gray fur with silver highlights caught in my headlights, amber eyes reflecting back at me like 2 small flames in the darkness. My training kicked in immediately. Wolves avoid humans, always. It's instinctive, hardwired into them. Seeing one this close, this calm, was wrong. Something was very wrong. The pup didn't run. Instead, it took several tentative steps toward my vehicle. I sat frozen, hand hovering over my radio. Should I call animal control? But they'd been closed for hours. What was I supposed to do with a wolf pup in the middle of town? Slowly, I opened my car door. The frigid air hit me like a slap, stealing my breath. "Easy there, little one," I called softly, my voice barely above a whisper. "Where's your mama?" The pup stopped about 10 feet away. Then it did something that made my chest tighten. It whimpered, a high-pitched, desperate sound that seemed to echo in the empty street. I'd heard scared animals before, injured dogs, trapped cats, but this was different. This wasn't fear. This was urgency. The pup suddenly darted forward, closing the distance between us. Before I could react, it grabbed my pant leg gently in its teeth. Not biting, not aggressive, pleading. It tugged, released, ran a few steps toward the tree line beyond the houses, looked back at me with those luminous amber eyes. The message was crystal clear. "Follow me." "You've got to be kidding," I muttered, but the pup repeated the behavior, grabbed my pant leg again, tugged harder this time, then ran several more steps. The whimpering grew more frantic. I looked down at the pup's paws. Even in the dim light, I could see they were bleeding slightly from the ice and frozen ground. How long had this little creature been searching? How far had it traveled? My hand went to my radio. "Unit 12 to dispatch," the radio crackled. "Go ahead, Unit 12. I'm investigating possible distressed wildlife on Maple Street. Might be a while." "Copy that." "Need backup?" I looked at the desperate pup, now pacing in tight circles, clearly begging me to hurry. "Negative. I'll update when I know more." "Roger that. Be safe." I grabbed my flashlight and the first aid kit from the trunk, pure instinct, though I had no idea what I'd need it for. The pup immediately perked up when it saw me preparing to follow. It bounded ahead several yards, then stopped to make sure I was coming. All right, I'm coming," I said, my breath forming clouds in the freezing air. "Show me what you want me to see." We reached the tree line within minutes. The temperature seemed to drop another 10 degrees as we entered the forest. The canopy blocked what little light remained from the setting sun, plunging us into near total darkness. My flashlight beam cut through the shadows, illuminating snow-heavy branches and dark tree trunks. The pup moved with absolute purpose now, no longer checking if I followed. It knew I was committed. We pushed deeper into the woods, my boots crunching through snow that was easily a foot deep in places. My legs burned with the effort. The wind howled through the pines, a lonely, mournful sound. 10 minutes in, I started questioning my judgment. What was I doing out here? This could be dangerous. Mountain lions hunted in these woods. Bears, though they should be hibernating, and I was following a wolf pup into complete darkness with nothing but a flashlight and a service weapon I prayed I wouldn't need to use. But something kept me moving forward, some instinct deeper than training. Then the pup stopped abruptly. It sat in the snow and tilted its head back, releasing a thin, wavering howl that raised every hair on my arms. I rounded a massive pine tree, my flashlight sweeping ahead, and my heart stopped. There, lying motionless in the snow, was an adult wolf, or something like a wolf. Even in my shock, I could tell she was bigger than a pure wolf should be, her build slightly different. A hybrid, part wolf, part dog. That explained why the pup hadn't fled from humans. This mother had some domestic blood in her. But explanations didn't matter in the face of what I was seeing. Her left front leg was caught in a steel trap. A leg hold trap. The jaws clamped tight around her limb. Blood had seeped into the snow around her, creating a dark crimson halo that looked black in my flashlight beam. The wound looked hours old, maybe even days. The wolf, I immediately thought of her as Shadow because of her dark fur, was barely breathing. Her flank rose and fell in shallow, labored movements. Her amber eyes tracked my approach, and in them I saw something that broke me. A mixture of fear, pain, and desperate hope. The pup ran to her mother immediately, licking her face, whimpering frantically. Shadow made a soft sound in response, trying to comfort her baby despite her agony. "Oh, God," I whispered, dropping to my knees in the snow. "Oh, God, what did they do to you?" I forced myself to focus, to think like the cop I was trained to be. I examined the trap closely without touching it. Steel jaw hold type. These had been illegal in Montana since 1995. No identification markers, no registration numbers. This wasn't some forgotten relic from decades past. This trap had been set recently, deliberately, and hidden under snow and brush. Someone had done this on purpose. Someone had set this trap, probably set others, and never came back to check them. They'd left this animal to suffer and die. Rage flared hot in my chest, momentarily burning through my shock. But I pushed it down. Anger wouldn't help Shadow now. I studied the wound. The leg was mangled, the trap's steel jaws having bitten deep into muscle and possibly bone. Infection was setting in. I could see the redness, smell the faint but distinct odor. And hypothermia was likely, given how long she'd been lying in the snow. My professional assessment was immediate and grim. Critical condition. Without help, she had maybe an hour, maybe less. But there was more. As my eyes adjusted and I looked closer at Shadow's body, I saw other signs. Her teats were swollen. She'd been nursing recently. The pup was still dependent on her for milk, for warmth, for everything. This wasn't just one life hanging in the balance. If Shadow died, the pup would die too. A wolf pup this young couldn't survive a Montana winter alone. "Okay," I said aloud, trying to steady my voice. "Okay, Shadow. That's what I'm calling you. I need you to trust me, girl. I know you're scared. I know you're in pain. But I'm going to help you." Shadow's eyes held mine. For a moment, something passed between us. Understanding? Recognition? I don't know. But she didn't growl, didn't bare her teeth. Too weak, or choosing to trust? I hoped it was the latter. I needed to get that trap off her and fast. But leg-hold traps are dangerous to release. One wrong move and I could injure Shadow more, or hurt myself. The spring mechanism is powerful, designed to hold animals that fight and thrash. I forced myself to remember my training. Timber Ridge is an old logging town. Part of our police training included basic wilderness skills, including how to release various types of traps. Press down on the spring. Release the jaws carefully. Don't let them snap back. But there was another problem. Shadow was conscious and in agony. When I released the trap, the pain would intensify. She might bite out of pure instinct, even if she didn't want to hurt me. I looked at the pup, who was watching me with those intelligent amber eyes. "I need you to trust me too, little one." I removed my heavy police jacket, despite the brutal cold. My uniform shirt and undershirt would have to be enough. I approached Shadow slowly, speaking in low, soothing tones. "Easy, girl. Easy. I know it hurts. I'm going to make it better. I promise." I draped the jacket over Shadow's head, gently covering her eyes. It would reduce visual stimulation and, hopefully, prevent her from biting. Shadow tensed beneath the fabric, but didn't fight. The pup stayed close but quiet, as if she somehow understood what was happening. My hands found the trap's spring mechanism. It was stiff from cold and blood. I positioned my weight, planted my knees firmly in the snow for leverage. 3, I counted aloud, more for myself than for them. 2, 1. I pressed down with every ounce of strength I had. The spring compressed. The jaws opened with a metallic clang that seemed to echo through the forest. Shadow yelped, a sound of pure pain that cut through me like a knife. I yanked the trap away and tossed it aside, then quickly removed my uniform shirt. My undershirt would have to be enough. I wrapped the shirt around Shadow's wounded leg, creating a pressure bandage, trying to remember everything I'd learned in first aid training. The pup pressed against my side, shaking. "It's okay," I told her, though I wasn't sure if it was. "It's going to be okay." Now came the hard part. Shadow weighed at least 80 pounds, probably more. She was injured, in shock, and barely conscious. And I needed to carry her back through deep snow to my patrol car. I didn't let myself think about whether I could do it. I just knew I had to. Getting Shadow across my shoulders was the hardest physical thing I'd ever done. She was dead weight, her body limp with pain and exhaustion. I positioned myself, got my legs under me, and lifted with everything I had. My legs screamed in protest. My back felt like it might snap. But I gritted my teeth and stood, Shadow draped across my shoulders in a fireman's carry. The pup stayed right beside me as I began the agonizing journey back through the forest. Every step was a battle against deep snow, against the weight, against my own burning muscles. Sweat poured down my face despite the freezing temperature. My breath came in ragged gasps. "Stay with me, Shadow," I panted. "We're not far now. Just stay with me." The pup, I'd already started thinking of her as hope, kept touching my leg with her nose every few steps, almost like she was encouraging me, telling me to keep going. I stumbled twice. The first time I caught myself against a tree trunk, barely keeping Shadow from sliding off my shoulders. The second time, I went down to one knee, the impact sending a jolt of pain through my entire body. "Get up," I told myself through gritted teeth. "Get up, Sarah. They're counting on you." Somehow, I got back to my feet. Shadow's breathing was getting shallower. I could feel her heart beating weakly against my shoulder. Time was running out. When I finally saw the lights of my patrol car through the trees, I could have wept with relief. The last 50 yards felt like 50 miles, but I pushed through, my entire body shaken with exertion. I managed to open the back door and gently, as carefully as my exhausted arms could manage, lowered Shadow onto the seat. She lay there motionless, except for the slight rise and fall of her chest. Hope jumped in immediately and curled against her mother's side, never leaving her for even a second. I collapsed against the car for a moment, gasping, my legs trembling. Then training kicked back in. I couldn't rest. Every second mattered. I got into the driver's seat and grabbed my radio with shaking hands. Unit 12 to dispatch. Go ahead, Unit 12. I need an emergency wildlife contact, now. There was a pause. Wildlife emergency? Animal control is closed for the night. This isn't a stray dog situation, I cut her off, my voice sharp with urgency. I have a critically injured wolf-dog hybrid, leg-hold trap injury. She's going into shock. I need an emergency veterinarian who handles wildlife, and I need that number now. Another pause. I could almost hear the dispatcher's surprise at my tone. I'd never been the emotional type, never raised my voice or showed urgency beyond what protocol demanded. Stand by, she said. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Shadow's eyes were closed now. Hope was licking her mother's face frantically, trying to wake her. Come on, I muttered. Come on. Unit 12, I have a number for you. Dr. Emily Carter runs the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center outside town. She handles these kinds of cases. I scribbled down the number and immediately called it on my cell phone, my hands still shaking from adrenaline and exhaustion. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times, 4. My heart was sinking with each ring when finally, Carter Wildlife Rehab, this is Emily. The words tumbled out of me. Dr. Carter, my name is Officer Sarah Whitfield with Timber Ridge PD. I have a critical emergency. Wolf-dog hybrid, female, leg-hold trap injury to the left front leg, significant blood loss. Signs of infection and hypothermia. She's barely conscious. Dr. Carter's voice sharpened immediately. All business. How bad is the bleeding? I twisted to look, soaking through my makeshift bandage. Her breathing is shallow and rapid. I think she's going into shock. How far out are you? I calculated quickly. 10 minutes if I push it. Push it! I'll prep for emergency surgery, but Officer Whitfield... Her voice gentled slightly. Leg-hold trap injuries have a very low survival rate. You need to prepare yourself for the possibility that she's going to make it, I said, my voice harder than I intended. She has to make it. Her pup needs her. There was a pause on the line. There's a pup? About 8 to 10 weeks old. The pup is what found me. She led me to her mother. Jesus, Dr. Carter breathed. Okay, drive fast, officer. I'll be ready. I hung up, activated my lights and sirens, and floored the accelerator. The roads were empty at this hour, which was good because I was pushing the patrol car well beyond safe speeds for icy conditions. My eyes flicked constantly to the rearview mirror, watching Shadow's labored breathing, watching Hope's desperate attempts to keep her mother conscious. My mind was racing almost as fast as the car. How long had Shadow been in that trap? How had she survived even this long? And what kind of monster sets illegal traps and never checks them, leaving animals to die slow, agonizing deaths? A memory flashed through my mind, unbidden. I was 5 years old again, sitting on the cold stone steps of St. Catherine's Children's Home. I had a small backpack with everything I owned in the world. A social worker's hand was on my shoulder. "This is your new home, Sarah." But it wasn't home. It never was. I was shuffled through 3 different foster placements before I aged out of the system. I learned early that counting on anyone, attaching to anyone, was a mistake. People left. People always left. Sitting in that car, racing through the night with 2 dying wolves in my back seat, I understood something for the first time. Hope was about to lose her mother the same way I'd lost mine. She was about to learn what it meant to be alone, to be abandoned, to have no one in the world who cared if you lived or died. "I won't let that happen," I said aloud, my voice breaking. "I won't let her feel what I felt." The realization shocked me. When had I started caring this much? When had these two creatures, whom I'd known for less than 2 hours, managed to slip past the walls I'd spent 25 years building? My vision blurred. I realized I was crying, tears streaming down my face as I drove. I wiped them away roughly with the back of my hand. The car fishtailed on a patch of ice. I corrected smoothly, forcing myself to focus. Getting us all killed wouldn't help anyone. Hope made a sound from the back seat, a high-pitched whine that sounded almost like a question, almost like she was asking if her mother would be okay. "Almost there, baby," I called back to her. "Almost there. Hold on." The signs for the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center finally appeared. I took the turn onto the gravel road too fast, the car sliding before I regained control. The building ahead was lit up like a beacon, every light on, the door standing open. A figure stood outside despite the brutal cold. A woman in her late 40s, gray streaking through her hair, wearing scrubs under a heavy coat. Dr. Emily Carter. She had a stretcher beside her and a young man, probably an assistant, ready to help. I skidded to a stop and was out of the car before the engine even stopped. Dr. Carter took one look at Shadow and her expression went tight. "Jesus Christ. Get her inside. Now. Together." The three of us lifted Shadow onto the stretcher. She didn't even respond to being moved. That scared me more than anything else. Hope tried to follow as we rushed toward the building. Dr. Carter turned. "The pup can't come into surgery." Hope planted her feet and growled for the first time. A tiny defiant sound that said clearly, "I'm not leaving my mother." I dropped to one knee beside her, ignoring my screaming muscles. "Hey, little one. I know you're scared. But you have to let them work. You have to trust me." Hope's amber eyes locked onto mine. I saw fear there, and desperation, and something else, a question. Could she trust me? Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she sat, still trembling, but sitting. "I'll stay with her," I said to Dr. Carter. "I promise I won't let her be alone." Dr. Carter nodded once, then looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Officer Whitfield, I need you to understand something." "The odds, I know the odds," I interrupted. "Just please, try. We'll do everything we can." The surgery doors swung shut, leaving Hope and me alone in the waiting area. The Wildlife Rehabilitation Center was clearly operating on a shoestring budget. The furniture was worn, the paint faded. But the walls were covered with photographs, dozens of them. Wolves, bears, eagles, deer, animals that had been brought here broken and had left whole. Success stories. I sank down onto the floor, not bothering with the chairs. Hope needed me at her level. She approached cautiously, sniffed my outstretched hand, then pressed her head into my palm. Something cracked in my chest, some piece of the armor I'd worn for so long. I picked her up carefully and settled her in my lap. She was shaken, from fear or cold or both. I wrapped my arms around her small body. "She's strong," I whispered, not sure if I was trying to convince Hope or myself. "She's a fighter, just like you. You're both fighters." Hope burrowed deeper into my arms, seeking warmth and comfort. I held her and stared at those surgery doors, willing them to open with good news. Time crawled. I noticed things about Hope I hadn't before. She was underweight, her ribs slightly visible beneath her fur. How long had they been alone out there before Shadow got caught in the trap? How long had this tiny creature been struggling to survive? She was beautiful, though. gray fur with silver highlights, amber eyes that held surprising intelligence. A survivor. Hope, I said aloud, testing the name. I think I'll call you Hope. Hope's ears twitched at the sound of her new name. Her eyes started to droop. The exhaustion was catching up with her after what must have been hours, maybe days, of desperate searching. I found myself rocking her gently, instinctively, like a mother would rock a child. The thought startled me. I'd never thought of myself as maternal, never let myself think about what I'd missed growing up without parents, without anyone to hold me like this when I was scared. Hope fell asleep in my arms. I kept holding her, kept staring at those surgery doors, kept praying to a God I wasn't sure I believed in anymore. An hour passed, then two. The clock on the wall showed 8:45 p.m. It felt like days had passed since I'd seen that tiny figure in my headlights. Hope woke with a start, whimpering. She looked around, confused for a moment. Then her eyes fixed on the surgery doors. She knew her mother was beyond them. I know, I murmured. I'm worried too. My phone buzzed. Dispatch, checking in. I'd completely forgotten to update them. I called back quickly. Unit 12, checking in. Still at the wildlife rehab. The animal is in surgery. Sarah, the dispatcher said. She'd never used my first name before. Your shift ended 3 hours ago. You've been gone for 5. Are you planning to— I'm staying, I said flatly. It's just an animal. I'm sure it'll be fine. You can come in tomorrow and— Something hot and fierce flared in my chest. She's not just anything, and I'm staying. I'll call in tomorrow. I hung up before she could respond. Hope was looking at me with those knowing eyes. Some people don't understand, I told her quietly. They don't get it. But you and I, we understand what it means to need someone, to be desperate and alone and scared. More time passed. My body ached from the exertion of carrying Shadow through the woods. My uniform was stained with blood and wet from melted snow. I was cold, exhausted, and hungry. I didn't care about any of it. At 10:30 p.m., the surgery doors finally opened. Dr. Carter stepped out. Her scrubs were covered in blood. Her face was drawn with exhaustion. Her expression was completely unreadable. I stood up, Hope still in my arms, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, just waited for Dr. Carter to tell me if Shadow was alive or dead. She's alive, Dr. Carter said. My knees nearly buckled. I had to lock them to stay standing. Hope squirmed in my arms, sensing the shift in energy. But, Dr. Carter continued, raising a hand, it's still critical. We managed to save the leg, barely. The infection was extensive. She'd lost a tremendous amount of blood. The hypothermia complicated everything. The next 24 hours will determine whether she makes it. I found my voice. But she'll survive? She can pull through? Dr. Carter hesitated, and that hesitation terrified me more than anything. If she survives tonight, her odds improve significantly. But even then, Officer Whitfield, Sarah, sometimes animals give up. The trauma, the pain, the will to fight just leaves them. I've seen it before. I thought about my own life. How many times had I been close to giving up? How many nights had I sat alone in my apartment, wondering what the point was? The walls I'd built weren't just to keep people out. They were to keep myself from feeling the full weight of my loneliness. Can we see her? I asked. She's unconscious. The anesthesia will take hours to wear off, but— Dr. Carter glanced at Hope. Actually, having the pup nearby might help. Animals respond to familiar presences, even when sedated. She led us through the surgery doors into a small recovery room. It was warm, almost too warm after the brutal cold outside. Medical equipment hummed and beeped softly. The air smelled of antiseptic and something metallic. Blood. Shadow lay on a padded examination table. An IV line ran into her front leg, the uninjured one. The damaged leg was heavily bandaged, the white gauze stark against her dark fur. Her breathing was shallow but steady, more steady than it had been in the car. Hope pulled toward her mother with such force I nearly dropped her. I set her down carefully, and she immediately scrambled onto the table, moving with surprising gentleness for such a young animal. She curled against Shadow's side, fitting perfectly into the curve of her mother's body. Shadow's ear flickered. Just a tiny movement, but it was there. She sensed her pup's presence, even deep in unconsciousness. Dr. Carter watched with an expression I couldn't quite read. "That might be what saves her," she said softly. "The will to stay. For her baby." "How long before we know?" I asked. "I'll monitor her through the night." "You should go home, Sarah. Get some rest. You've been through—" "I'm staying." Dr. Carter studied me. Really looked at me. Maybe for the first time. Whatever she saw in my face made her nod. "There's a cot in my office. I'll bring you some blankets. And coffee. You look like you could use both." "Thank you." She left, and I pulled a chair close to the examination table. I rested my hand gently on Shadow's side, feeling her heartbeat beneath my palm. It was thready, irregular, but present. She was still fighting. Hope nestled closer to her mother, never taking her eyes off me, like she was making sure I'd keep my promise to stay. "We're going to get through this," I told them both. All three of us. I don't know when I started including myself in that we. When had these two wolves become my responsibility? My family. The word shocked me. Family. I'd never had one of those. Never let myself even dream of having one. Dr. Carter returned with blankets and a thermos of coffee. She also brought a sandwich. "You need to eat something." I hadn't even realized I was hungry until I saw the food. I ate mechanically, not tasting anything, my eyes never leaving Shadow. "The trap," I said between bites. It was a leg hold. Steel jaw type, illegal in Montana since '95. Dr. Carter's expression hardened. "I know. I've seen too many animals come through here with those injuries. Someone's been setting them in the national forest for years. We've never been able to prove who." "I know who," I said quietly. "Marcus Thorne." Dr. Carter's sharp intake of breath told me she recognized the name. Marcus. God. I heard about his son. Terrible tragedy. But this... "Grief doesn't excuse cruelty," I said, my voice harder than I intended. "No," Dr. Carter agreed, "it doesn't." I thought about confronting Marcus, about making him pay for what he'd done, but right now that didn't matter. Right now, all that mattered was Shadow and Hope surviving. I sipped the coffee, letting its warmth spread through my cold, exhausted body. Dr. Carter left to check on other animals in the facility, promising to look in on us every hour. The hours crawled by. I watched the monitors, counting heartbeats, measuring breaths. Hope slept fitfully, occasionally waking to lick her mother's face before settling back down. Around midnight, I found myself talking to Shadow, whispering things I'd never said out loud before. "I know what it's like to be alone," I told her, "to be scared and hurt and think no one's coming to help. I spent my whole childhood feeling like that, and I swore I'd never feel it again. So I built these walls, kept everyone out, told myself I didn't need anyone. Shadow's breathing stayed steady. Hope's ears twitched, listening even in sleep. But watching Hope search for you, seeing how she refused to give up. She walked for miles through a blizzard. Her paws were bleeding. She was terrified. But she kept going because she knew you needed her, because love was stronger than fear. My voice cracked. I don't know how to do that, how to love without being terrified of losing it. But maybe you could teach me, if you stay, if you fight. The room was quiet except for the medical equipment and the soft sound of Hope's breathing. Around 3 a.m., something changed. Shadow stirred slightly, her eyes opened just a crack, just for a second. They found me in the dim light of the recovery room, found me and held my gaze. In that moment, I felt something pass between us, not words, obviously, but understanding, recognition, trust. Her eyes closed again, but something had shifted. Some decision had been made. I exhaled shakily and realized I'd been holding my breath. Dr. Carter came in at 4 a.m. for her regular check. She looked at the monitors and her eyebrows rose. Her vitals are stronger, heart rate is stabilizing, blood pressure coming up. She's going to make it, I said. It wasn't a question. Let's not count our chickens yet, Dr. Carter cautioned, but I could hear the hope in her voice. But this is the best sign we could ask for. I must have fallen asleep in the chair around 5 a.m., because the next thing I knew, sunlight was streaming through the window, and Dr. Carter was gently shaking my shoulder. Sarah, wake up. I jerked awake, instantly alert, my hand going to my weapon before I remembered where I was. What? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, Dr. Carter said, and she was smiling, actually smiling. She made it through the night. Her vitals are steady. She's going to wake up soon. I looked at Shadow. Her breathing was deeper, more regular. The monitors showed numbers I didn't fully understand, but they looked better than they had hours ago. Hope was awake, tail wagging slightly, sensing the change in her mother. What now? I asked. Now we wait for her to wake up, and then we start the real work. Recovery, rehabilitation. It'll be a long road. She'll need weeks, maybe months of care before she's strong enough to. Dr. Carter paused. What happens after that, I'm not sure. Hybrid wolves are complicated. They can't go back to the wild. They're not domestic enough for most homes. Usually they go to sanctuaries. My chest tightened. Separated from them? After everything? What if someone wanted to adopt them? I asked carefully. Dr. Carter looked at me, understanding dawning in her eyes. Montana does allow wolf dog ownership with special permits. Given the circumstances, you saving her life, I think we could make a case. But you'd need land, space. These aren't house pets. There's a property for sale, I said, the idea forming as I spoke. The old Henderson place, 5 acres backing up to the forest. That would work, Dr. Carter said slowly. But Sarah, it's expensive. And the responsibility. I know, I interrupted. I know what I'm signing up for. And I want to do it. Dr. Carter studied me for a long moment. You're sure? This is a lifetime commitment, 20 years, maybe more. I looked at Shadow, fighting her way back to life, at Hope, who'd never given up on finding help for her mother, at the family I'd somehow found in the middle of a frozen forest. I'm sure, I said. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. But even as I said it, I knew there was something I had to do first. Someone I had to confront. The person responsible for Shadow's suffering. The person who'd set that trap and left her to die. Marcus Thorne. I need to go handle something, I told Dr. Carter. But I'll be back. I promise. She nodded. We'll watch over them. I bent down to Hope's level. I'll be back soon, little one. Your mama's going to be okay. Hope licked my hand once, a gesture of trust. As I walked out of the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center into the cold morning light, I felt different, changed somehow. The walls I'd spent 25 years building had cracks in them now. And instead of terrifying me, it felt liberating. I had a purpose. I had something worth fighting for. I just had to make sure the person who'd almost destroyed it faced justice. I drove back to the forest first, back to the scene where I'd found Shadow. The morning sun made the snow glitter like diamonds, beautiful and deceptive. This place had nearly been a grave. I found the trap easily. I'd thrown it several feet away from where Shadow had been caught. I photographed it from every angle, careful not to contaminate any potential evidence. Then I bagged it properly, following protocol I'd learned years ago, but rarely needed to use in a town as quiet as Timber Ridge. As I searched the area more carefully in daylight, my anger grew. I found 6 more traps, all the same type, all illegally set, deliberately hidden under snow and brush, all positioned to cause maximum suffering. Someone had turned this beautiful forest into a killing ground. I knew who. Everyone in Timber Ridge knew Marcus Thorne's story. 15 years ago, his 8-year-old son had been killed by wolves during a camping trip. Marcus had fallen asleep on watch. By the time he woke to his son's screams, it was too late. His wife had left him, unable to forgive him for not protecting their child. Marcus had never forgiven himself either. But knowing the story didn't excuse what he'd done. Pain doesn't give you the right to create more pain. I loaded all the traps into my patrol car and drove to Marcus's property. His house sat at the edge of the national forest, remote and isolated. It had probably been well maintained once, but now it showed signs of neglect. Peeling paint, sagging porch, overgrown yard buried under snow. The house of someone who'd stopped caring about anything except his grief and rage. 2 trucks sat in the driveway. Lights were on inside. He was home. I knocked firmly on the door. My hand stayed near my service weapon, not because I thought Marcus was dangerous to people, but because you never knew how someone would react when confronted. The door opened. Marcus Thorne looked exactly like I'd expected. Mid-50s, weathered face lined with hard years, gray beard that needed trimming. But it was his eyes that struck me. They were haunted, empty. The eyes of a man who died 15 years ago, but whose body had forgotten to stop. "Officer," he said, his voice neutral, "what can I do for you?" "Mr. Thorne, I'm investigating illegal trapping in the Bitterroot National Forest." His expression didn't change. "That's so. I found 7 leg-hold traps. Steel jaw type. They've been illegal in Montana since 1995. Must be old traps, forgotten ones. That forest is full of history. These were fresh sets, Mr. Thorne. Recent activity. And one of them caught a wolf-dog hybrid 2 days ago. A nursing mother. She nearly died." Now, Marcus reacted. His jaw tightened. "Wolf? Hybrid," I corrected. "Part wolf, part dog. with an 8-week-old pup who depends on her for survival. The mother almost died in your trap, Mr. Thorne." "My trap?" His voice hardened. "That's quite an accusation, officer." "I'll have forensic evidence soon enough. The traps will be traced back to you, but I think we both know the truth. You set those traps." Marcus's face went rigid. "Even if I did, which I'm not saying, I was protecting this community." "From what? From a mother trying to survive winter with her baby?" "From wolves!" Marcus's voice rose, the first crack in his controlled facade. "You don't understand—" "Your son," I said quietly. "I know about your son, Mr. Thorne. I'm deeply, truly sorry for what happened to him. I can't imagine that kind of loss." Marcus flinched like I'd struck him. Don't you dare bring up my boy." "I'm not trying to diminish your pain," I continued, keeping my voice gentle but firm. "Losing a child is the worst thing that can happen to a parent. But, Mr. Thorne, that wolf dog didn't kill your son. Her pup didn't kill your son. They're innocent." "They're all the same," Marcus said, his voice breaking now. "Wild, vicious, killers." "No," I said firmly, "they're not. That pup walked through miles of snow in a blizzard to find help for her mother. Her paws were bleeding from the ice. She was terrified of humans. Wolves are supposed to be. But she overcame that fear because her mother needed her. She showed more loyalty, more love, more courage than—" I stopped myself. "Than what?" Marcus pressed. "Than most humans I've met," I finished quietly. Silence fell between us. The morning wind whistled through the pine trees surrounding his property. Marcus's shoulders slumped. When he spoke again, his voice was hollow. My boy was 8 years old. We were camping, just the two of us, father-son trip. He was so excited. A tear rolled down Marcus's weathered cheek. I fell asleep. I was supposed to be keeping watch. The wolves came in the night. By the time I woke up, he couldn't continue, didn't need to. My heart ached for him despite everything. "I'm truly sorry, Mr. Thorne. My wife left me 6 months later. She said I should have protected him. She was right. It was my job to keep him safe, and I failed." His voice was barely a whisper now. "So I made a vow. No other family would suffer what we did. I'd make sure of it." "By making other families suffer?" I asked gently. "Marcus, that pup almost lost her mother because of your trap. She almost experienced the exact same loss your son did. The same loss you carry every day. Can't you see? It's the same pain, the same tragedy, whether it happens to humans or animals." "It's not the same," he started to protest, but the words died in his throat. "It's exactly the same," I said. "Pain is pain. Loss is loss. That mother fought for her life because her baby needed her, just like your son needed you. Just like you wish you could have fought harder to save him." Marcus was crying openly now, silent tears streaming down his face. "I can't bring him back. No matter how many wolves I kill, I can't bring Tommy back." "No," I agreed, "you can't. And I have to file charges against you, you know that." He nodded, defeated. "I know. But," I continued, "I'll speak to the prosecutor. I'll recommend counseling instead of jail time. Community service at the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. Maybe helping the animals you've hurt could help you heal. Maybe it could give Tommy's death some meaning, not through revenge, but through redemption." Marcus looked at me with surprise. "Why would you do that? After what I did?" "Because punishment won't bring your son back, but maybe, just maybe, you can honor his memory by protecting the things he would have loved. Kids love animals, Mr. Thorne. Your Tommy probably loved wolves before that night. Don't let what happened turn his memory into something dark. Let it become something that creates life instead of death." Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I'll remove all the traps today, and I'll think about what you said. It wasn't everything I wanted, but it was a start." I drove back to the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center with a strange feeling in my chest. Not quite satisfaction, not quite peace, but something like hope that maybe, just maybe, something good could come from all this pain. When I walked back into the recovery room, everything had changed. Shadow was awake. Her head was lifted, eyes alert. She was still weak. I could see that in the way she held herself, the tremor in her muscles. But she was conscious and aware. Hope was bouncing around her mother, licking her face, making excited little yipping sounds I hadn't heard from her before. Shadow was licking Hope back, that maternal instinct overriding her own pain and exhaustion, making sure her baby knew she was okay. When Shadow saw me enter, she turned her head. Our eyes met across the room, and I stopped in my tracks. Dr. Carter was checking the monitors. "She woke up about an hour ago. First thing she did was check on her pup. Second thing, she glanced at me with a slight smile. She looked for you." "For me?" I could barely get the words out. "I think she knows you saved her life." I approached, slowly, carefully, giving Shadow time to react. But there was no fear in her eyes, no aggression, just that same look I'd seen in the forest. Recognition. Trust. I extended my hand. Shadow sniffed it, then pressed her muzzle into my palm, just like Hope had done hours earlier. Something inside me broke. I sank to my knees beside the examination table, and the tears came. Not gentle tears, but deep, wrenching sobs that shook my entire body. All the emotion I'd been holding back for the past 24 hours, the fear, the exhaustion, the desperate hope, came pouring out. Dr. Carter quietly left the room, giving me privacy. Shadow made a soft sound, almost like a whimper. But not a sound of pain, a sound of comfort, like she was trying to tell me it was okay. Hope climbed into my lap, and I held her while Shadow watched with those intelligent amber eyes. "I'm sorry," I managed to say through my tears. "I'm so sorry you went through that. But you're safe now, both of you. I promise you're safe." I stayed there on the floor crying, while these two wolves I'd known for less than a day somehow held together the pieces of my broken heart. "I was alone for so long," I whispered. I told myself I didn't need anyone, that I was fine on my own, but I was lying. I was so lonely, and I was too scared to admit it. Too scared to let anyone in because I didn't want to lose them. Shadow continued to watch me, her gaze steady and somehow understanding. "But you two, you didn't give me a choice, did you? Hope pulled me into your lives, whether I wanted it or not. And now I can't imagine. I can't imagine my life without you." The realization was both terrifying and liberating. 25 years of walls, of careful distance, of protecting myself from pain, all of it crumbling because of a tiny wolf pup who'd refused to give up on her mother. I'd thought I was rescuing them. But the truth was so much more complicated than that. They were rescuing me. Over the following week, I visited every single day. Before my shifts, after my shifts, on my days off. I couldn't stay away, didn't want to stay away. Shadow improved steadily. Each day she was a little stronger, a little more mobile. She walked with a pronounced limp that would likely never fully heal, but she walked. Hope grew more confident, more playful. The trauma of nearly losing her mother was fading, replaced by the resilience of youth. And me? I was changing too, though I couldn't quite articulate how. Dr. Carter watched it all with knowing eyes. One evening, as I sat on the floor of the recovery room with Shadow's head in my lap and Hope curled against my side, she finally said it out loud. "You're attached to them." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Is it that obvious?" "You light up when you see them, and they light up when they see you. I've been doing this work for 20 years, Sarah. I know a bond when I see one." I looked down at Shadow, gently stroking her fur. "What happens when she's fully recovered?" Dr. Carter sat down across from me. "Normally, we'd transfer hybrid wolves to sanctuaries. They can't return to the wild. They're not wild enough to survive on their own and not domestic enough to integrate with wild packs. But they can't live as house pets either. They're too unpredictable, too strong, with instincts that make them dangerous in typical home environments." My chest felt tight, so they'd be separated from me. "Unless," Dr. Carter said carefully, "someone with the proper qualifications wanted to adopt them. Montana law allows wolf dog ownership with special permits. You'd need to demonstrate you have adequate land, proper containment, knowledge of their needs. Given that you're law enforcement and you saved Shadow's life, I think we could make a very strong case to the Wildlife Commission." Hope stirred in her sleep, pressing closer to me. Shadow's eyes were half closed, content. "I don't have land," I said, though my heart was already racing with possibility. "I live in a small apartment." "The Henderson property," Dr. Carter said. 5 acres, backs right up to the National Forest. The estate is motivated to sell. It would be perfect for them." "That's expensive. I'm a small-town cop. I don't exactly make—" "Think about it," Dr. Carter interrupted gently. "Just think about it. Because, Sarah, I have to tell you, I don't think you can walk away from them any more than they can walk away from you. You're a pack now. A pack. A family." The words I'd never let myself think about were suddenly all I could think about. That night, lying in my empty apartment, I did the math. With my savings and a loan, a big loan that would stretch my budget thin for years, I could maybe, possibly afford the Henderson place. It needed work, probably a lot of work, but it had good bones and it had land, space for Shadow and Hope to run, to be themselves, space for all of us to heal. By the time the sun rose, I'd made my decision. 2 weeks after I'd found Shadow in that trap, Dr. Carter made the announcement. "She's ready to go home." Home. The word caught in my throat. I'd spent those 2 weeks in a flurry of activity. Applied for the special permit to own wolf dogs. Put in an offer on the Henderson property, which was accepted. Started the loan process with the bank. Began planning the modifications I'd need. Reinforced fencing, a secure outdoor enclosure, proper shelter. Dr. Carter had helped with all of it, writing letters of support, connecting me with the right people at the Wildlife Commission. Marcus Thorne, true to his word, had written a statement taking full responsibility for the traps and supporting my adoption application. It was the first step in his own journey toward redemption. The day I brought my truck to pick them up, my hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from the enormity of what I was doing. I was choosing family, choosing connection, choosing to tear down every wall I'd spent a lifetime building. Shadow walked out of the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center on her own 4 legs. She limped, would always limp, but she was strong, proud, a survivor. Hope bounced around her mother, excited beyond measure. She'd grown noticeably in the past 2 weeks, already showing signs of the powerful, beautiful wolf she'd become. Dr. Carter hugged me, something that would have made me deeply uncomfortable a month ago, but now felt natural. "Take care of them, Sarah." "I will. With everything I have. I know you will. And Sarah, they'll take care of you too. That's how packs work." I loaded Shadow and Hope carefully into the truck bed, secured and safe with blankets and water. As I drove toward the Henderson property, toward our new home, my heart felt full in a way I'd never experienced before. Full and terrifyingly vulnerable, and absolutely, perfectly right. The walls were gone. In their place was something I'd never had before, a reason to wake up in the morning. A purpose beyond just surviving. A family that had chosen me as much as I'd chosen them. Shadow and Hope had saved my life in that frozen forest. But the real miracle was that they kept saving it. Every single day. Just by existing. Just by being part of my pack. The first night in our new home, I sat on the floor of the small cabin with Shadow on one side and Hope on the other, and I finally understood what home meant. The cabin was simple, just 1 bedroom, a living area with a stone fireplace, a tiny kitchen. It needed work, the paint was faded, some floorboards creaked, and the porch sagged slightly. But I'd started a fire in the fireplace before picking them up, and now the room glowed with warmth. I'd ordered large dog beds, food bowls, toys for Hope, everything they'd need to feel safe and comfortable. Shadow had investigated the cabin cautiously at first, sniffing every corner, her wolf instincts assessing this new territory. Then she'd chosen a spot near the fireplace, circled 3 times, and laid down with a contented sigh that made my heart soar. Hope had been less cautious, bounding around, exploring everything with puppy enthusiasm. But eventually, she'd curled up against her mother, content. They'd both looked at me then, waiting for me to join them. So I sat down on the floor between them, and Hope immediately climbed into my lap, while Shadow rested her head on my leg. "This is home now," I told them softly. "For all of us, forever." Outside, the Montana winter raged. Wind howled through the pine trees. Snow fell in thick curtains. But inside, we were warm. Safe. Together. Tears slid down my face, but they were happy tears this time. Pure joy mixed with wonder that this was real, that I really had a family. I thought about the little girl I'd been, sitting on those cold orphanage steps. If I could go back and tell her that someday she'd have this, have love, have belonging, have a purpose, would she believe me? Or would the walls she was already building prevent her from even imagining it? Shadow shifted, pressing closer. Hope licked my hand. "I named you both perfectly," I whispered. Shadow, the darkness I came from, the pain I carried. And Hope, the light I found, the future I never knew I could have. As we sat there together, fire crackling, I felt something fundamental shift inside me. The fear that had driven me for 25 years, the terror of losing, of being abandoned again, was still there. But it no longer controlled me, because I'd learned something in that frozen forest. Love is worth the risk. Connection is worth the vulnerability. Family is worth the fear of loss. 6 months later, spring arrived in Montana like a promise kept. The snow melted, revealing green grass and wildflowers. Birds returned, filling the air with song. The property transformed from a winter landscape into something alive and vibrant. I'd spent every free moment working on the cabin, repaired the porch, painted the exterior, fixed the creaky floorboards. Dr. Carter had helped me plant a garden, vegetables and herbs. "Every home needs growing things," she'd said with a smile. Shadow and Hope thrived. Shadow's limp had diminished to barely noticeable. Her coat was glossy and thick, her eyes bright with health and contentment. Hope had grown into a beautiful adolescent wolf, all long legs and oversized paws she hadn't quite grown into yet, but already showing the intelligence and grace she'd inherit from her mother. The town had accepted them, eventually. There'd been fear at first. Wolves in Timber Ridge? Dangerous! But seeing them with me, seeing how gentle and well-trained they were, people's opinions slowly changed. I'd become part of the community in a way I'd never had before. No longer the isolated, distant officer. Now I was Sarah, the woman who'd saved the wolves, who'd given Marcus Thorne a chance at redemption, who'd proven that family could be found in the most unexpected places. My morning routine had changed completely. I'd wake up not to an alarm clock, but to Hope's cold nose pressed against my face. Shadow would be waiting patiently by the door. We'd go for a walk on our property together, just the three of us, as the sun rose over the mountains. They never ran away, never even tried. This was their home too, and they knew it. One morning, as we reached our favorite overlook, a spot where we could see the entire valley below, my phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Carter. "Coffee later? Have something to discuss." I agreed, curious about what she wanted to talk about. Over the past months, Dr. Carter had become my closest friend. My first real friend, actually. Strange how opening your heart to two wolves could teach you how to open it to humans, too. That afternoon, I met her at the local cafe. It was the first time I'd sat there socially. Usually I'd just grabbed coffee to go, avoiding unnecessary interaction. But now I was comfortable sitting, talking, being seen as part of the community. "You look happy," Dr. Carter observed as I sat down. "I am," I said, and meant it completely. Really, truly happy. "Good, because I have a proposal for you." She explained that the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center was expanding. They wanted to start an educational program, teaching schools and community groups about wildlife conservation, about respecting animals, about coexistence. "I want you to be our community liaison," she said. "You'd speak to groups, demonstrate proper wildlife interaction, show people Shadow and Hope, teach them that understanding and respect can replace fear." I was shocked. "Me? Public speaking? "You're not just anything," Dr. Carter interrupted. "You spoke at that town council meeting and changed hearts. You have a gift, Sarah. You're a survivor who found healing through connection with animals. That story matters. It could help so many people." I thought about Marcus Thorne, who now volunteered at the rehabilitation center 3 days a week, who'd found his own path to healing by helping the animals he'd once tried to destroy, who'd told me last week that working with the wolves reminded him of his son, how Tommy had loved animals, how he would have wanted his father to protect them, not hurt them. If my story could help even one person the way it had helped Marcus. "Okay," I said. "I'll do it." Dr. Carter grinned. "Excellent. Your first speaking engagement is at Timber Ridge Elementary School next month. 3rd graders. They're studying ecosystems and wildlife." We spent the next hour planning the program, discussing what I'd say, how I'd present Shadow and Hope. Other cafe patrons watched us with friendly smiles. One stopped by our table to thank me for what I'd done for the wolves. I drove home that evening with a sense of purpose I'd never experienced before. Not just surviving anymore, actually living, actually mattering. When I pulled up to the cabin, Shadow and Hope were waiting on the porch.
They always knew when I was coming home, somehow. Pack instincts, maybe. I sat on the porch steps with them as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. "You know what today is?" I said softly, stroking Shadow's head while Hope leaned against my side. "1 year ago today. 1 year since you found me, Hope. 1 year since you saved all of us." Hope's tail wagged. Shadow pressed closer. "I was so lost before you. So alone, and I didn't even know it. I'd convinced myself I was fine, that I didn't need anyone. But you knew better. You saw something in me worth trusting, something worth saving." My voice grew thick with emotion. "Shadow, you trusted me with your life, with your daughter's life. That trust changed everything. It taught me that I was worth loving, that I could love without losing myself." Both wolves leaned into me, and we sat like that as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. "I spent 25 years afraid to feel anything," I continued. "Afraid to connect, to love, to need. You taught me that love is worth the risk, that connection is what makes life worth living, that family isn't about blood or biology, it's about choice, about showing up, about staying even when it's hard." The night air was cool but not cold. Spring had brought warmth back to Montana, just like Shadow and Hope had brought warmth back to my frozen heart. "I love you both," I whispered, "more than I knew I could love anything. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for teaching me how to be human again." We stayed on the porch until the stars filled the sky. 3 silhouettes against the Montana night. A pack. A family. Home. Later, lying in bed with Shadow on the floor beside me and Hope curled at my feet, I thought about how much had changed in 1 year. How a single moment, a tiny wolf pup appearing in my headlights, had transformed everything. I'd been drowning in loneliness without even knowing it, and Hope had pulled me to shore. If you're listening to this story, maybe you're like I was, lonely, isolated, convinced you don't need anyone. Or maybe you've lost someone like Marcus did, and that loss has turned dark inside you. I want you to know something. Hope can find you in the darkest places. Sometimes it comes on 4 paws, sometimes in unexpected forms, but it will find you if you let it. That tiny wolf pup walked through a blizzard to save her mother, but in doing so, she saved me too. She reminded me that loyalty exists, that love is real, that trust is possible even after betrayal. Shadow taught me that even when you're broken, you can heal. You can trust again. You can love again. But you have to let someone in first. And both of them taught me that the smallest voices sometimes carry the most important messages. That we should never ignore a cry for help. That paying attention, really caring, can change everything. My life was empty before them. Now it's full. Terrifyingly, beautifully full. So this is my message to you. Listen for your hope. Watch for your shadow. And when they find you, Don't push them away out of fear. Let them in. Let yourself heal. Let yourself love. Because walls around your heart don't just keep pain out. They keep life out, too. I broke down those walls. It was terrifying. But on the other side was everything I'd been missing. Home. Family. Me. The person I was always meant to be. If a lonely cop and two broken wolves can find their way to joy, anyone can. You just have to be brave enough to follow when hope comes calling. Sometimes we spend so much of our lives building walls to protect ourselves from pain that we forget those same walls keep out joy. Sarah's story reminds us that it's never too late to let love in, to find family in unexpected places, to discover that the loneliest parts of ourselves can be healed by the simplest acts of courage. That tiny wolf pup didn't give up when everything seemed hopeless. She kept searching until she found help. And in saving her mother, she saved a woman who didn't even know she needed saving. How many of us have convinced ourselves we're fine alone, that we don't need connection, that it's safer to keep everyone at arm's length? But safety isn't the same as living. True happiness comes when we're brave enough to be vulnerable, to open our hearts despite the risk of loss, to choose love even when fear whispers that it's dangerous. Sarah found her family on four paws in a frozen forest. Where might yours be waiting? Have you ever been saved by someone or something unexpected? What walls are you still holding on to that might be keeping out the very thing you need most? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.